The waves were still crashing when Daniel realized the boat was gone. Not drifting, not damaged, gone. The horizon stretched endlessly in every direction, a thin blue line separating the sky from the ocean, as if the world itself had erased everything else. The wind whipped against his face, carrying the salty sting of reality, and for a long moment he couldn't breathe. His 5-year-old son's drawing was still folded inside his wallet, a crayon picture of the two of them holding hands under a crooked yellow sun. And now Daniel Reed, single father, junior operations manager, overworked and underpaid, was stranded on a deserted island with the one person who intimidated him more than the ocean ever could, his boss, Victoria Langford. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of ordinary people, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories alive. The company retreat had been meant to impress investors. A luxury yacht, catered meals, speeches about expansion and vision. Daniel hadn't wanted to go. Babysitters were expensive, and his son, Ethan, hated when he traveled. But Victoria Langford had personally requested his presence. She had built Langford Global from nothing after her father's sudden death, and she was known for her sharp mind and sharper expectations. Daniel admired her resilience, but from a safe distance. To him, she was a woman of steel, immaculate suits, flawless presentations, and a gaze that could dissect excuses in seconds. No one had expected the storm. It arrived like a living thing, devouring the sky in minutes. The crew scrambled, orders were shouted, investors screamed. Daniel had been on the lower deck helping secure equipment when the violent tilt of the boat threw him against the railing. He remembered seeing Victoria gripping a metal bar, her perfectly styled hair plastered to her face, eyes wide not with fear but calculation. Then a wave, massive and merciless, crashed over them. When Daniel woke up, it was to silence. A suffocating, unnatural silence broken only by distant gull cries. He coughed seawater from his lungs and rolled onto warm sand. A few yards away, Victoria lay unconscious, one arm twisted awkwardly beneath her. Training from years of being both mother and father kicked in. He crawled toward her, checking her pulse, adjusting her position, speaking softly though she couldn't hear him. When she finally stirred, confusion flickered across her face before reality settled in. The yacht was nowhere in sight. The first day was chaos wrapped in disbelief. They searched the shoreline for debris, salvaging what little had washed up, a cracked life vest, a floating cooler with 2 bottles of water, half a packet of protein bars. Daniel took inventory automatically, rationing, prioritizing, shelter before sunset. Victoria tried to take control at first. She suggested strategies as if they were in a boardroom rather than stranded on an island. Her voice carried authority, but beneath it Daniel heard something unfamiliar: vulnerability. The ocean did not respond to leadership skills or quarterly reports. As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. Daniel built a crude shelter from palm fronds and driftwood. His hands blistered, his muscles screamed, but he kept working, because that's what he did. He had learned that exhaustion was a luxury single parents couldn't afford. Victoria watched him, her polished exterior cracking with each passing hour. She had grown up privileged, then hardened by corporate warfare. Survival in the wild was not something her MBA had covered. On the third day, hunger sharpened their tempers. The protein bars were gone. Daniel attempted fishing with a sharpened stick, failing repeatedly before finally catching something small and silver. Victoria tried to help, slipping on wet rocks and slicing her palm. Blood bloomed against her skin, bright and alarming. Daniel dropped everything and ran to her. He tore fabric from his own shirt to bandage her hand. His movements were firm but gentle, the same way he cleaned Ethan's scraped knees. Victoria's eyes locked onto his, and for the first time since they'd met, she looked at him not as an employee, but as a human being. That night, beneath a sky crowded with indifferent stars, Victoria asked about his life. And without intending to, Daniel told her. He told her about Ethan's mother, who had left when Ethan was just a year old, unable to handle the weight of responsibility. He described nights spent rocking a feverish child while finishing spreadsheets on his laptop. He spoke of missing promotions because he refused to stay late when babysitters canceled. He admitted how terrifying it was to be the only safety net for a small boy who believed his father could fix anything. Victoria listened in silence. The wind softened around them, as if even the island leaned in. In the days that followed, something shifted. Survival stripped them of titles and expectations. Victoria learned to gather firewood despite splinters piercing her manicured fingers. Daniel showed her how to recognize edible fruit. They took turns keeping watch at night, scanning the dark horizon for rescue lights that never came. One afternoon, a tropical storm rolled in without warning. Their fragile shelter collapsed under violent rain. Victoria froze as thunder cracked overhead, memories of the yacht flashing across her face. Daniel grabbed her shoulders, guiding her toward a rocky overhang he had scouted days earlier. They huddled together as rain poured like grief from the sky. In that cramped space, soaked and shaking, Victoria broke. She confessed her own loneliness, the endless board meetings, the investors who saw only profit, the friends who treated her success like a competition. She admitted she had noticed Daniel long before the retreat, not because he was the loudest or most ambitious, but because he never complained. He left exactly at 5 every day, no matter who watched. She had once thought it was a lack of dedication. Now she understood it was devotion. Days turned into weeks. Hope thinned but did not vanish. Daniel carved marks into a tree to count time. Victoria began smiling at small victories, a well-built fire, a successful catch, the first time she managed to climb a low palm tree without falling. They became partners in the truest sense, bound not by contracts but by necessity and trust. Then one morning, Daniel spotted something glinting in the distance. A cargo ship far beyond shouting range, but close enough to see. He built the largest signal fire he could manage, feeding it every spare branch. Smoke billowed upward, thick and desperate. The ship did not change course. Victoria stood beside him as the vessel faded into the horizon. Daniel's shoulders sagged. For the first time, he allowed himself to cry. Not for himself, but for Ethan. He imagined his son waiting by the window, asking when Daddy was coming home. Victoria placed her bandaged hand over his. She didn't offer corporate optimism or strategic plans. She simply stayed. That night, she said something that altered everything. She told him that if they survived, when they survived, she didn't want things to go back to the way they were. She had built an empire but neglected its foundation. She wanted to create a childcare initiative within the company, flexible schedules, real support for parents like him. She wanted him to help her design it. And then, her voice trembling with a sincerity that surprised even her, she asked him to stay. Not just at the company, but in her life. Daniel didn't answer immediately. The ocean had taken so much from him before: trust, stability, certainty. But it had also revealed something extraordinary. Beneath Victoria's ambition was a woman capable of growth. Beneath his exhaustion was a man worthy of being seen. Rescue finally came on the 29th day. A search helicopter spotted the remains of their storm-disturbed shoreline. The roar of its blades was the most beautiful sound Daniel had ever heard. He held Victoria's hand as they were lifted from the island, both of them squinting against the wind and tears. Back in the city, headlines called it a miracle survival story. Cameras flashed, reporters asked dramatic questions, but the real transformation happened quietly. Victoria kept her promise. Langford Global introduced one of the most progressive family support programs in the industry. Daniel was promoted, not because of pity, but because she trusted his integrity. The office culture shifted slowly, then profoundly. And as for the question she had asked on that island, he didn't answer it with grand speeches or impulsive declarations. He answered it by showing up, by allowing himself to hope again, by inviting her to Ethan's school play months later, where she sat in the front row, applauding louder than anyone else. Sometimes survival isn't just about staying alive. Sometimes it's about finding the courage to build something new from the wreckage. If this story touched your heart even a little, take a moment right now to like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more emotional journeys like this. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who need them. And before this story ends, I want to ask you something special. Comment the word hope below if you believe even the hardest storms can lead us somewhere better. Because somewhere between the storm and the rescue, between fear and forgiveness, two people discovered that being stranded wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of becoming who they were always meant to be.